The Republican presidential primary made an early appearance on Staten Island this week when, a few weeks after Groundhog Day, Governor Ron DeSantis popped out of his Florida digs to cast a long shadow over the race for his party's nomination. We'll talk about what that means. The Point starts right now. I'm joined by New York City Council Minority Leader Joe Borelli to talk about the city, the upcoming council races, and presidential politics. But I want to start, Joe, with presidential politics because this past week Ron DeSantis came to Staten Island, Trump country, and made a big pitch for being a law and order presidential candidate. What's your take on that, and what does it mean in terms of the national political stage?
Well, I think it's great. I think to see the Staten Island Republican Party be this point of focus for the Republican Party at large is a great thing. We're the small red borough in a big blue city, so if things are happening here for us, we'd like to highlight that. And if we can get a governor from a state where many of my constituents are up at night browsing Zillow and browsing Redfin and looking for houses down there, I'm happy to have him.
But here's the question. He invaded Trump land, Trumpville. What chance does Ron DeSantis have in New York, which last time Staten Island went for Donald Trump?
In New York, it's certainly an uphill battle if he chooses to enter the primary, but Republicans are excited to have someone like that potentially be a candidate. You can't deny that things are going pretty well in Florida. They just hit their 50-year low in crime. The taxes are lower. The quality of life is pretty good. The schools are good. The weather, of course, is nice. But you can't deny that a lot of people around the country are pointing to Florida as a success story. That's going to be a tough thing for any opponent, whether it's Donald Trump or any other primary opponent, to take away. I still think, though, New York is probably the Donald Trump country, and the Republican primary voters will probably support the president.
But yet you went to the event, but Vito Fossella, the Staten Island Borough president, didn't go to the event. Does that mean that Staten Island Republicans are divided? No, we're happy to have any presidential candidate. We just had Tim Scott last year at one of our events. If the former president came to Staten Island, he would get a rousing reception from a lot of people. So we're happy to open up ourselves as a venue to anyone who wants to run as a Republican and make this country great again. So what do you make of the fact that Lee Zeldin, who was the Republican candidate for governor and who was a very strong supporter of Donald Trump, was the person who introduced Ron DeSantis to Staten Island voters? I think he created a good, clear choice for the public who was there and for the media narrative around the events. People faced a choice last November whether New York would go the direction of Florida, perhaps on law and order, which was the topic of this meeting. So New York had a choice. Do we go and repeal bail reform? Do we hold prosecutors accountable? I think he was there to really highlight that. I think whatever shakes out in the primary. To highlight what you think is bad with governing and public safety in New York. Correct.
And if you notice, I think one of the more interesting things to come out of it is seeing Mayor Adams' tweet against Governor DeSantis. He criticized him for a lot of things, but he didn't criticize him on policing and bail reform and some of the specific criminal justice stuff he mentioned.
But with all due respect to the former president, do you think it's time for the Republicans to have some new blood at the top of the ticket?
Look, I'm a primary guy. I think primaries are good. So we'll see how it shakes out. You know, the president right now is polling about 46%. He really has to cross that 50% threshold to have it in the bag. I don't think he has it yet. I mentioned Tim Scott earlier. He's out there in Ohio this weekend putting his feet in the water. I think the primary season is going to be longer than most people think.
Can anybody take out Donald Trump?
In a primary, I think it's tough. But we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out.
Here's the real question. So right now, Donald Trump, depending on which poll you read, you say 46%, a lot of polls say 30%. But whatever, he has a base in the Republican Party. There's a number of candidates, 88 candidates in the Republican Party that want to run, from former Vice President Trump, you know, Mike Pompeo, Nikki Haley is already announced, Rick Scott. I mean, there's this many candidates. If you have so many candidates running against Donald Trump, and he has either 30 or 40%, it's really hard for another candidate to beat him because he has, they split the vote. So if the Republicans really want new blood, don't they have to figure out like the one person who has the best chance to beat him?
Right, and I guess the challenge for him comes from, he's sort of the established quantity. So as people drop out of the race in the field you mentioned, do they go to Trump or do they go to a DeSantis or a Tim Scott or someone else? That's the challenge for Trump. I think the other challenge is for him to remind people that in 2016, he won because he was actually a big tent candidate. The Republican Party won because they attracted more African-American support, more Latino support, more Asian support, more suburban support, more Rust Belt support. All those people and groups went into Trump's win in 2016. How does he bring those same groups that might have faded away over the past 8 years?
Remember, he lost the last election.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So how do you bring those people who left him in 2020 back into the fold?
So how does he do that? How does he do that?
I think he has to do like what he did in East Palestine, Ohio, and show up and buy McDonald's for people. I know that sounds hokey, but those are the kind of things that really ingratiate you with a big segment of the American population. When you're there talking to people facing a problem that the Secretary of Transportation, the president himself should be involved in, and you're the one out there going, I think that starts to really re-ingratiate you back into some of the Rust Belt states.
So you're talking about the fact that he went to where the train with the toxic stuff derailed, and he brought Trump water to them, saying you're going to have water for months to come. But is that enough? I mean, to show up at a spot where there was a train derailment and say, I'm bringing you water?
It's not enough in the sense that he can't do it as a one-off. I think he could make a really strong case by going around the country and highlighting where the Biden administration has failed, whether that be on the border in Texas, whether that be here in New York. By the way, we just saw a number. We're paying 4 hotels $90 million a year to house migrants, 4 out of 95 total, by the way. Those 4 hotels are costing us more than the entire Office of Emergency Management, the Department of City Planning, the Department of Records, and like 2 or 3 other agencies. So the president could be out there going to cities like New York and elsewhere, highlighting really where the Biden administration failed. He could stand at every gas station in the country and point to it, just like those funny signs you see with Joe Biden saying, I did that. He could do things
So he should go to the border and say, build the wall yet again?
Yeah, I think, look, when we have a problem with migrants that we do in this city, and the problem is not with the migrants themselves, the problem is with the right to shelter law. I think that's fair criticism. I mean, this is what half the candidates running around the country were talking about last year during the cycle.
Yeah, but you're not going to undo New York's right to shelter law and the fact that we are a sanctuary city. Are you suggesting that maybe the way out of this is for Mayor Adams to say, let's forget about being a sanctuary city so more people won't come here?
We're limited by the state constitution and a Callahan decision. I don't believe, and I think a lot of people would agree, that was intended to provide a social safety net for New Yorkers and not basically say that New York is the world's refugee camp. Most people could agree on both of those poles. Finding the middle is the challenge, and I think we're getting way too far towards the refugee camp model, where we're allowing people to come in here uninhibited and taking complete responsibility.
But how do you stop that?
If we spend, well, it has to stop at the border. There's no question about that. My colleagues want to have 1% funding of our budget for the Parks Department. That's $1 billion. How do you get to $1 billion for the Parks Department when you're spending $2 billion on the migrant crisis? You can't do both. So it's going to be a challenge.
So you're predicting big service cuts in order to deal with the migrant problem?
Sure, the money has to come from somewhere, and if we're talking $2 billion at a minimum, perhaps $4 billion has been suggested. The mayor had mentioned that. It would be impossible to see how spending 3% or 4% of our budget would not result in significant cuts elsewhere.
So, but I guess the question is this: is it a fair question to ask Donald Trump, presidential candidate, if he would give money to New York to pay for what is now an overwhelming migrant problem?
I think he would.
Or does he just point the finger at Biden and say it's his problem?
Well, I think he would say we should build the wall again, but realistically start the Remain in Mexico policy, which, by the way, the Biden administration just came out with a novel policy that people applying for asylum should remain in the country of origin. I mean, that's essentially what the Trump administration had been doing for quite a while, which Biden said was a bad policy.
So we only have about 30 seconds left in this section. I'm just wondering, do you think that New York City should be encouraging the migrants who come here to go other places?
I think New York should be encouraging the federal government to stop the migrants from coming coming here in an uninhibited process to begin with. Look, it's a myth to say the Trump administration didn't let asylum seekers in. They let tens of thousands every year. They did it in an organized means, in a means testing program. That's what I think most people, including myself, would hope for.
Yeah, but would you want to see them even go to other cities in New York State?
Yeah, I mean, if that helps alleviate some of New York City's pressures, then of course that might be an option.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it right there, but our conversation continues right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York.